Okay. Okay, welcome to our second budget meeting. I'll start by calling the meeting to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki and the district of Spagnagity, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. East Hants further acknowledges the 50 African Nova Scotian communities whose 400-year history have contributed to the province's culture, history, and legacies. We are all treaty people. Next item is I'll be looking for the approval of or amendments to the agenda. Seeing no items, we'll consider that approved. Next, I'll be looking for the approval of the budget meeting minutes of January 29th, 2026, or any changes to. Seeing none, they are approved. And we'll be going into a continuation of review of draft 2026-27 operating budget with Wade and Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So tonight, 3 items on the agenda if we have time. One, I hope to finish reviewing the overview slides of the draft operating budget. I believe we have around 25 or so slides to get through on that. Again, the objective there is to kind of give the council members an overview of what's in the draft budget before we get into more specific issues as we move forward in the budget process. Then later, after that, hopefully we'll get Joe on to talk about general government grants and the Community Partnership Fund grants. And then following that, we'll have Kim on the business plan document, which you should have copies of that on your desk today, both the document and the slides that Kim will be working with as she presents that area. So on the first slide, you'll notice that this is about distribution of single dwelling units. You'll see on the right-hand side, it has a percentage of dwelling units. That's also indicated by the blue graphs, blue bar graphs going up there. Then you'll see the orange is the percentage of assessment of the total assessment that we're dealing with this year. And you can see that this arrow in the bottom also shows by columns the individual range evaluations for the dwelling units. And so this slide demonstrates that dwellings valued at less than $250,000 make up about 58% of total dwelling units and about 33% of the assessment base. And it also, the opposite and vice versa, if you will, dwelling units valued at more than $250K make up 42% of the total dwelling units and 67% of the assessment base. So that may or may not be of interest to you. Move on to the next slide here. This slide is really something we've already talked about. It's just simply stating that the draft document that you have in front of you is anticipating a 1 cent increase in the GTR rate and a 1 cent commercial rate reduction as well, down to 256, and decrease. Yeah. And also at the moment, the draft has done nothing with regard to the waste management fee of $230 for the moment. Anyways, I think earlier on, last time we met, there was a bunch of topics I wanted to indicate we want to bring forward and talk a little bit different or separately about those. One of them is the waste management service fee for $230 per dwelling unit. And we will want to bring forward and talk about that because there may be an issue there where council may want to discuss dropping that or not. This is simply a breakdown in a pie chart of our waste management costs. You can see there that we have $4.5 million in total. A lot of it is in recycling, waste, and organics, the vast majority of those costs. Another big portion is the waste management operations at 20% of those costs. This is one of my favorite slides. Not. This is trying to explain if we were to take all of our various GTR budget lines that we have in our draft budget, that's both revenues and expenses, but leave out those four lines there that you see for the commercial rate, the residential rate, the resource rate, and the waste management rate. What is the gap that we would have left to try to have to find dollars for? That's what this is trying to show. And in this draft that we're dealing with right now, it's $33.4 million. So this draft is contemplating the commercial rate, the residential rate, the resource rate, and the waste management rate at the numbers that we've already talked about to balance the budget to zero at this point in time. But this slide goes on to explain what's the increase in this draft year, 26-27, from previous years. So we said it was 33.4 million now, this year, 26-27, that we're drafting. But what was the increase from the previous year to get to that? And it's $3.4 million. There's, of course, what we're talking about is when you take the budget from last year, this current year, 25-26, and compare it to what we've drafted for 26-27, the total increase in dollars needed is $3.4 million, and there's all sorts of reasons for it. It's basically, you're looking at line by line of revenues and expenditures to explain that $3.4 million. But there are some major reasons for that that brings us very close to that 3.4. Things like RCMP costs is a big factor. I don't have that in front of me. Jordan, you know off the top of your head? 422,000, I believe. Yeah. Then we have the education amount transferred to the province, $737,000 there. We have, and Jordan, I'll get you to talk about the numbers here, but there's two numbers in relation to payroll numbers that we're talking about. When you talk about payroll, you've got, basically a factor for your existing staff and what you expect their salaries to increase by and the related benefits, whatever that may be. So we have a factor there that is part of the payroll costs. And then, as you know, there are several staff that are in the draft, several new additional staff in the draft budget that would also increase an overall payroll cost as well. That would be part of that 3.4 number. Do you have those numbers off there, Jordan? What are they there? Just show them out closest 100,000.
New positions.
One moment here.
You push your button, Jordan, she can find it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, for new positions in the general tax rate, we're looking at 671,000 approximately. And another factor there would be the market review for next fiscal. We're budgeting just under 240,000.
So that's all the factor. Now, there's some other factors that we talked about earlier today. One of them was a significant increase in what we're transferring to reserves this year compared to last year. What was the overall number for that, Jordan?
The overall increase to reserves is actually 851,000, as we have 409,000 transferred to reserves this year. And when you look at the prior year, it was actually a 442,000 transfer from reserves. So it's a one from reserves, another two. It leads to that 851,000 increase in transfers to reserves, which makes up a large part of that expense.
So there's, of that $3.4 million increase for this year, those are some of the big numbers. RCMP, you get your education, you've got the salary components for new staff plus the existing staff and what that will increase. And then you've got this significant amount of increase what the draft budget has in it for transfers to reserves. So those are all significant. Any other significant numbers, really big numbers in those numbers, Jordan?
Those would be the main ones,
Mhm.
the salaries, the education, RCMP, and the transfers to
Okay.
reserves. That makes up approximately 3 million of the 3.4 million.
Yep. Thanks, Jordan. So, that slide also goes on to say that if we had kept the GTR rate at the existing level and not reduce it by 1%, the actual revenues that we would have increased by 3.715 million. But we didn't need it to balance and therefore dropped it. The bottom of that slide indicates what, in the current draft, 1 cent change in tax rates will increase tax revenues. So residential and resource change by 1 cent, it's just over $300,000 additional revenue. And commercial just over $27,700. This slide that we see here is simply taking each of the individual districts that we have and allocating that 1 cent change for residential resource. You can see the total is 300,000, and you can see how it breaks out into the individual districts. And the same for the columns on the right-hand side, commercial totaling just over 27,700. And you can see how it is impacted in each of the 11 districts. This slide and the next slide is simply showing that we've had what I interpret as a positive trend in relation to the residential tax rates over the 2017-2026. Always good to see a downward trend on those, and I personally hope those continue into the future. And you can see the same is true of the commercial tax rates, not as steep a decline, but still downward motion. This slide talks about the general operations and the approximately $52 million. Where are the dollars being spent? You can see in the pie chart here where those dollars are being spent, and it's reflecting an important factor here, that the municipality really doesn't have any sort of significant or control or any control at all. About 42% of the GTR expenses out of their control. So, that's the mandatory education transfer to the province. You've got the RCMP costs, and you've got the fire protection, which is, the fire department levies, which is, from our perspective, just money in and money out. And a small amount for the assessment costs for PVSC. This next slide is, as I mentioned earlier, or previous session, is about the tax burden. Probably one of the most important aspects of the documents that we're reviewing. How are the residents being impacted by the changes that may or may not be made during your decision-making process? And again, the total tax burden, simply assessments times general tax rates plus assessments and area rates, number of dwellings times the waste management fee equals tax bill, but also the cubic meters of water and wastewater management fee, which goes on to the water bill, equals the total tax burden. That's the total. And we try to, in the next few tables, we break it up and try to give some insight as to where the draft numbers are in 4 different tables here. And again, these are just draft, and they're going to change. Any changes done in the tax rates or anything like that will impact these ultimately in the end, but at the present, the draft is reflecting the general tax rates, some fairly, what I would call relatively low percentage increases, from even under 1% up to maybe 1.2 or 3% overall, but that's just a DTR, that's just in the initial tax rate. the real important factor is the tax burden, including area rates. And, we have examples here of some of the various regions, and looking at, different assessment levels for each region, and what is the overall increase in percentage-wise and total dollars as well. And that, as you can see, fairly similar type of trend as we saw before. Sorry. This one is historical tax burden, general tax rate. This is again looking at a 5-year period just for the GTR itself. And again, you can see fairly consistent percentages in the 5-year column, close to the far right, percentage changes in the 6% level over that 5-year time frame. And per year numbers fairly consistent as well. But that's, again, really because we're just talking about the general tax rate there. But going forward to this, which is probably the more all-inclusive rate, if you will, it's the historical tax burden all-in rates, again with various areas of the municipality, different value house assessment values, looking at a 5-year change. And you can see there over that 5-year period, the percentage change, depending upon the area, is as low as 3% in some areas, going up to as high as 14% in some areas. And you can also see in the far right column, when you average those out per year, the percentage change, mostly 1 to 2% range over that time period. In my opinion, limited as it is, that's a fairly significant, not significant, but in my opinion, over that time frame, it's an impressive rate of increase. It's not, in my opinion, overly burdensome on the taxpayer when you're talking about those types of numbers. Of course, everything's relative, and I'm talking relative to other municipalities. My knowledge is that this, compared to lots of other municipalities, East Hants is relatively low compared to others. This table is simply just, again, reflecting that at the present, the urban service rates are not being considered for change. It's also indicating what 1 cent raises in the urban service rate, and right now that's $114,000 in this draft. Sportsplex rate. I mentioned again at the last meeting, this is another area that I would like to take some time, probably next week, and have some more thorough discussion about the Sportsplex on a variety of issues, and we'll probably have Alana and some of her team and come in and talk about some of the issues that are going on. But just for now, you can see here the 4 cent rate for the Sportsplex is raising $790,000 for the next fiscal year. And we are projecting a growth management grant going into the reserves for the Sportsplex of just over $81,000. And I'll flip to the other side, the next slide, to show that due to the numbers that we're looking from an operating perspective, we're going to be drawing down our reserves at this point in time for the Sportsplex of $82,000. And so looking at this slide, you can see on the far right-hand column, the 26-27 budget, area rate $790,000, operating revenue up to $1.79 million next year. Expenditures, as you look down at them, you can see when we add all of this up, we're actually in 26-27 reflecting an operating loss of $82,000 at the moment. And you can see there that there's some significant increases, which I would suggest we will get into the details of that when we have Alana and our team talk about more about this. Staffing and payroll costs are one of those factors. I know power increases are some of the factors. There's a lot of factors putting pressures on the numbers in this Sportsplex, but we will go into more detail of that at a session next week. Again, not anticipating any changes at the moment in these streetlight rates. Fire departments, a few things I want to talk about fire departments. One is, again, next week I want to have a separate session to talk about a request from one of the councilors in the municipal properties that don't pay a fire levy and what those dollars would mean to all the fire departments in East Hants if they were to have to pay. So want to bring that information forward. Don't have all the information yet, but that will be a discussion to talk about that and for council to make a decision on. That's one thing. You can look here, you can see here that the annual estimated increases for 26-27 is fairly substantial. $568,000 increase over last year's of $4.58 million. That's reflective of the increases in the assessments throughout the municipality. And as you look down the percentage increases, you can see that, relatively speaking, all of the departments have what I would consider healthy increases from 7% up to as high as over 23% for Lance. From a dollar perspective, of course, the smaller municipalities, don't have as significant an impact in those dollars and the percentages, but they do, as we talked about before, the growth management grant does help to compensate for that to some degree. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the fire departments, and I think, while don't have complete information on this, but I do believe we have 3 fire departments that may be considering asking for an increase in their rates, and there is one official request in, and that's from Milford, and to go up by 2 cents. And there's also anticipating to receive requests from Enfield for 2 cents. And we're also anticipating to receive requests from Lance for 2 cents. Now, I want to point out that the numbers here right now, as we speak, is fairly significant increases over last year, even at the current rates, just holding them flat. So as an example, let's see, Enfield, we can say is a difference in the dollars is just over $87,000 at 9.7%. That's increase there. Just trying to find my numbers here. Lance is Lance has $122,000 increase from actual 25-26 numbers. That in itself is a 23.8. But if we also add in the factor, if they come forward with another 2% request, that 23.8% is going to go up in total to a 39% increase in fire levies from 25-26 actuals to what would happen in 26-27. That's a pretty significant number, 39%. 39%.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
wait, I've got a number of counselors on who would like to speak. Is now a,
Yeah,
Good
can I
time
just
to-
finish
Yep,
a
yep, you
couple
go right
other
ahead.
numbers here? Let's see here. Enfield, yeah, Enfield, as you can see, was a 9.7% increase, just flat. But if another 2 cents is added on there, that will bring it up to 25% increase over 25-26 actuals. Still a significant increase. Milford, of course, is a smaller, dollar overall. The percentages are still relatively high if you're factoring in the request for the additional 2 cents. It would be a 22% amount of increase. And, yeah, so I wanted to point those out in particular. And,
Okay.
yeah.
okay, thank you. Well, we'll start with Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think since I've pushed the button, Wade had answered some of my questions, but my question is, with the recent increase, like in this, before the increase they were expecting, did any of those departments have any increase between the 2025 and 2026 already, like in 2025?
Yes, last year, when we went through the budget process, there was 2 fire departments that asked for fire levy increases. One was Elmsdale, and it was increased by 2 cents in the budget process last year. And Lance also came forward and asked for a 2-cent increase last year, and they received it. Those were the only 2 changes last year.
So those 2 cents were in the budget last year too?
For this current year that we're in right now, 25-26,
They weren't applied on the 2025, right?
they were.
They were?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
So
okay,
for
yeah.
this current year, they got 2 cents more onto their levy. Both Lance and Elmsdale.
Okay.
Thank you, Counselor. Next to speak is Counselor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I received a couple emails from constituents specifically over fire rates. And some were looking at it and, when they looked at, they asked about this chart specifically and, just for clarification of the public, the growth management grant gets paid out of what?
You want to handle that, Kim?
Go ahead.
Through the growth management grant was the calculation that was put in your policy last year, that a certain percentage of the general tax rate gets divided up between Mount Uniacke, the fire departments, the 9 Mile River streetlights, Grand Lake Enfield streetlights, and the Sportsplex.
Yeah, no, I just wanted that clarified, just so
Yeah.
people know where it comes, because there's other parts that come out of that same taxation that help other areas.
Yeah, there's also, for these fire departments, there is a operating grant that's not on this sheet that comes out of the general tax rate
Yes.
based on the other policy you have to fund fire departments with lesser assessments.
And that's what I was gonna try and get at was every district has the same number of people and the same number of homes. Pretty much, when you look at, some districts have a lot more homes, some have less. We talk about assessments and you have a $7 million farming operation that gets taxed only in the house because the rest of it's exempt. We're gonna be talking about other properties and, one of the questions that was posed to me was, well, in areas that have a lower assessment, why don't they go for a per unit dwelling cost to raise the money that they need to run their departments like the other departments do? Because when you go by assessment, the average person in higher assessed areas is paying a lot more for fire, even in the difference in rates. And, so when you look at it that way, if other areas needed more money for their fire departments, is there anything in our policy that would allow some departments to go per dwelling? And like we do for our waste management fee, and others to go by assessment? Is that available to be done, under our policy? And is that something that the fire service could explore with their local area councilors, or even at the fire service, chiefs meetings?
I think anything can be explored.
MGA
Ultimately, you'd
allows
have
it.
to come back here to council for approval of whatever methodology would move forward.
So, as the CIO just said, so the MGA allows that to happen, which would allow rural fire services to actually collect, more money for the services they provide, to those residents. Cause it's one of the things that, I had a resident who currently moved from one area of the municipality to another. And they said, even though I'm paying a lower rate, I'm paying way more in a total amount for my fire service than I did before. He goes, I was paying 20 some odd cents before, but now I'm paying 13, and I'm paying almost double for fire service protection than I did before, based on my assessment. And they were wondering why it wasn't done per unit to make it fair across for everybody, rather than just basing it on assessment. And I would add to it too, like, for these large areas that have these large tax exempt, facilities, I don't know if the tax exemption should stretch to the fire service, because, you know, you have a massive farm or a massive type of building, you're still gonna need people to respond. And you're still gonna want people to save all that property for you. And then if they don't have the tools that they need because they're not receiving the funding because of exemptions or low assessment, that's really not fair for those volunteers to be out there doing it that way. So that's just something that was brought up to me, in a couple of emails and a discussion from this one resident who was quite, upset that, he said, I looked at it and I thought I'd be paying less for fire service, but I'm paying over double. So it's one of those things that, I think the public should understand that, you know, there's, when we all vote, if you look at every one of our districts, there's not much difference between a couple hundred people here or there, right? And the number of dwellings, so it should be more equitable for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next to speak is Counselor Merriam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion. I move that staff prepare a report to review potential increases in the Milford and Lance fire levy of 2 cents re the 26-27 fiscal period, the additional revenue that will be generated, and the impact on the tax burden for residents and businesses.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor, seconder, and on before the motion is Counselor Rhino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple of questions. Councilor Perry brought up about the growth management grant. How was that figured out for fire departments? Because when I look at Maitland, Knoll, Kennecott, they're not equal in any way, shape, or form, so it has to be based on something, so can you give me Cole's notes on that? To review?
Kim, just to summarize, that includes all the factors. It includes the 1 cent factor and the growth management factor in those calculations. Can you bring up that? Yeah.
Refers me to another policy. Jordan, do you know the answer?
If you want to press your button there. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Through the chair, the way that the growth management grant is calculated for fire departments, the overall, we take 4% of the general tax rate for each of those areas, and we get a grand total. And at that point, then we
4% of the general tax rate or or the assessment?
4% of the assessment in that area.
Okay, 4%, that's a different thing, 4%
Yes.
of the assessment.
Yes. And we break out the growth management for the fire departments into actually 3 different categories. One is the what 1 cent on the levy would be. And then the other 2 are both based on the what we call the fire operating grant, and then an additional amount of the fire operating grant.
No, don't overkill this, just answer my question, you did, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, did I hear their CAO right, that there's another 8,000 that's not showing here that the rural fire departments get? Or was that somehow I misunderstood that?
They get operating grants as well.
That's what I was getting
That's-
into.
He was just about to tell you that when you cut him off.
Excuse me, I don't have my hearing aids tonight, so anyway, I forgot. So where's this $8,000 that you said that we get an operating grant? Is it shown in here, or is it mixed in with something, or?
Is it
It's
in
all
that
part
number?
of that growth management grant number.
It's all part
It's
of
all
the
in
growth
there.
management grant?
Yes.
That's why.
So like, let's say Maitland, 24,956, 8,000 of that would be part of that? Should not that have been broken down a little clearer, or,
It's
not, I wouldn't have asked the question, so.
Yeah, no, I agree, but for simplicity's sake, we put it all in one column, because we have so many columns on that analysis.
So we were
quite frankly.
saving papers, what you're telling me?
Yep.
No,
yep,
okay,
save the
I'll
paper.
accept that answer.
Keeps the rate down.
Speaking to Counselor Perry's point, I agree with him to a point. There's a discrepancies here, one thing, Counselor Perry alluded to roughly the same number of dwelling units in each district. Well, in each district, they made like District 5, there's 3 fire departments in District 5. One that part of District 5 serves Kennecott, and some serve Shubenacadie. So really, it's hard to, you may only think it's one fire department, but it's not. There's several in there. So that throws a lot of skew into that. But to go in to see a study, if we're, what a per household dwelling unit was in an assessment base, to me, I think that's all part and parcel of once we get what the province is gonna hand us, we have to do. I think that's part of a fire review that will have to come up during that needs assessment, whatever you wanna call it, but a review of the fire service in East Hants. So I do believe that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay, next to speak is the CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to go back to Councillor Perry's discussions around, resource land and whatnot. There is a recommendation as one of the 40 recommendations coming from the SANS review, that the province should explore opportunities to ensure that fire department levy rates for both resource lands and crown lands are updated to reflect the modern cost of providing for fire protection services. So that will be part of the fire service review recommendations. Well, that would be resource, yeah.
Okay, Counselor Tingley?
Through the chair to staff, just to make sure I understand this correct, where you're talking about Lance, the increase in 23.8%, is that because of an increase in the assessments, overall assessments? So really, people are still capped at, still within the cap. And Lance's rate is 16% cents per, right now, which is on the lower end of the scale?
That's correct. When you say lower end of the scale,
The
the
lower
higher
end
end of
of,
the scale is really for the smaller rural fire departments, 20 22 cents or higher, 21, 22
Oh, I
cents.
understand that.
Because of their smaller
I,
size.
I get that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to point out, the reason Lance is asking for 2 cents more is because they're doing some tremendous planning around trying to plan for a fire hall, depending on what the province comes out with and what the municipality will do. Councillor Merriam, myself, met with them last night, and they're going to share their financial statements and information with us. I think they're doing an excellent job around planning and organizing, and they're looking forward to hearing what the province got to say, and they're wanting to get on with a fire study themselves. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Next to speak is Warden Rolston.
Thank you. Speaking to the discussion around per household charges versus assessment, and we could apply that conversation to every single thing in this municipality. But the tradition has been not to do that. Assessment is the traditional way to do things. And the idea being that not in every case, but in many cases, the lower assessed homes belong to lower income folks in many cases. Folks who can't afford a $400,000 or $500,000 home somewhere. So as a percent of their income, they're still paying, a significant amount. And the differences in those rates there, a number of years ago, and not that many actually, term before last, we began increasing the rates for the rural fire departments by $0.01 a year for a number of years to bring them up to where they are now, to increase the amount per household that folks in those areas were paying. And as Councillor Rhino said, I don't object to looking at that or how that's going to look or whatever once we have this information from the province as to how things are going to look. We'll take it from there. But I would say I have, looking at the fire department nearest to me, for example, Rawdon, and they have an extra cent over the other rural departments for the simple reason when they finished the new addition or the addition onto that building and made it usable, they had to take out a loan, and that extra cent covers the loan payments on that because the estimates came in much higher than they anticipated. I have not heard any of the rural departments say that they're really, really struggling. Every fire department would use more. But when you look at what the levies raise from department to department, like we have departments that are bringing in almost $1 million a year to operate. So if you're going to go look at a per household charge, I guess you have to look at a per household charge for what? Then we ask the question, what's a reasonable amount for fire departments to operate on? And that opens a whole other can of worms that we don't really have anybody here right now to sift through, so to speak. So I do think when we know what changes the province is contemplating for the fire service, we might be better positioned to look at something different. At this point in time, I'm not interested in trying to change in the middle of a budget discussion the way that we fund fire departments. And I'm also going to say, yes, the $8,000 is included within that growth management grant. And the way that was figured out, it was done so that it doesn't come directly. It was done in such a way so that no one could ever say that the other departments were subsidizing the rural departments. That grant was folded in with this grant and figured out on that 4% or whatever it is based on, and there was deed transfer added in there. There were a whole lot of things entered into that formula. But it was done in such a way that the money going to those fire departments came from the areas that those fire departments served. So anyway, those are my comments. I guess it was not to the motion. I guess maybe we'll get back to the motion now. Thank you.
Okay. Counselor Musa, to the motion? Go ahead.
Speaking in support of the motion, if the Lance Fire Department go ahead with a new fire department, they're gonna be looking at 12 to 20 million dollars. And if you figure out how much it's gonna be the mortgage on that, it's almost $500,000 a year, right? Or more. So I expect them to come back. If that go forward, I don't think the 600 they're getting now plus the 2 cents is gonna do it. I expect them to come back for more, and I'll be approving it because if they need a new fire department, they need a new fire department. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Seeing no one left to speak, Warden, if you would mind taking the chair. Can, the motion on the floor, can that be repeated?
Yes, of course. I move that staff prepare a report to review potential increases in the Milford and Lance Fire levy of 2 cents re the 26-27 fiscal period. The additional revenue that will be generated and the impact on the tax burden for residents and business.
Thank you, Counselor. I would like to make an amendment to the motion that Enfield be included in that as well.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Councillor Tinley. I have no one looking, sorry. I have no one looking to speak, so are you ready to vote on the amendment, which is to add Enfield Fire to that motion? No one to speak, we'll go to the vote. Motion is passed unanimously. Now, the amended motion, Councillor Musa.
Just a clarification. The motion said Milford and Lance. Are those both fire department or just the Lance Fire Department?
Both Milford and Lance departments.
So they're both gonna be asking? Oh, okay.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. Motion is passed unanimously. And I will hand the chair back to you.
Okay, thank you, Warden. Okay. Wade, are you ready to continue?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Moving on, some more information in relation to the fire departments. Just a summary there, total levy amounts. At the moment, $5.1 million. That second line there hasn't been updated properly. Projection for 25-26 should not be $4.3 million. It should be 4.58. We'll correct it in the slides later on. That grant breakdown is actually, that we were talking about the growth management grant, $147,000 is actually broken down there into the 3 components on that page there. And of information for council members, the municipality does pay other amounts for the fire departments. The big dollar items is the fire service training, $20,000, WCB for firefighters over $36,000, training funds $10,000, and a risk consultant $18,500. And I think there was some smaller amounts, some recognition awards for $1,500. What was the? Was there a small? Oh yeah, there's a issue for elevator training that we're not quite sure is going to happen this fiscal year or next year. It's around $12,000, I think. Yep. Okay. This is the uniform assessment, which is about the mandatory educational amount that is on the tax bill, significant part of the bill. This is a number that we're mandated by the province to collect from the residents and pay to the province every year. There's a formula of how they assess it, and the rate that they charge based on that assessment hasn't changed for quite a few years. I believe it's 0.3028, if I recall correctly, Jordan. The total number there due to that for this coming year, 26-27, $8.9 million last year, 8.2 million, just over $700,000 increase or 9% for this year. and it's a significant portion of the overall general tax rate that we charge to residents. Of course, another significant number is the RCMP. Current budget is $6.89 million compared to last year's $6.4 million, $422,000 increase. And from a percentage perspective, that was 6.5% increase per officer in the budget. And again, a very significant part of all their overall general tax rate that we charge to residents. This slide, again, represents the impact of having the reserves that the municipality has and the tax rates. Because we have a significant and healthy balance in our reserves for both GTR purposes and USR purposes, it allows the municipality to avoid wide swings in tax rates from year to year, which is helpful to both the municipality and the residents. Transfers to and from reserves. Of course, we've got all sorts of types of reserves. And there was a question from one of the councillors last week, Councillor Tingley, in relation to what we're putting in and taking out of reserves. Jordan and I had a discussion after that meeting and said, you know, I think that's an important part that we should bring forward as a separate issue and bring forward and explain to you in more detail. So that's something we plan to do next week, to focus on some of the details of what's going on and coming out of the reserves, because it's an important part for the municipality's financial management, and it will be even more important part as we go into future years. And it does refer to page 36 and 38, which does provide information on that. And it does provide a wide range of various factors that we are contributing to now for transfers. This essentially just talks about and reflects how much we have in the various types of reserves: capital reserves, operating reserves, water depreciation reserves, and obligatory reserves. We took been looking at slightly over $50 million at the end of last fiscal year, and we will increase that again when we get to the March 31st, 2026 fiscal year. And that is my summary of the operating budget draft. As I said at opening, this is a draft report. It's up for you to examine, and we will continue to provide more information as we go forward and the details of what's in the draft budget, and for you to make final decisions as we go through this process of reviewing the operating budget and the water utility budget and the capital budget. So unless there's any other questions, is there anything, Jordan, you want to say? We good? Yep.
I was just going to say we've got a couple of councillors
Sure.
on. First to speak is Councillor Perry.
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair. Could you just go back to the RCMP page, please? So in looking at this, we have our two admin positions, and they just recently did a policing study. And we were looking at that one or maybe both of those positions under the new things could be, say that would be owed to us by the number of officers we have. Have we heard any more from the DOJ on that moving forward, and them accrediting us with those positions even though we put them in ahead of their assessment? No. Is there any talks planned for the future to, again, ask them, because if we are above our officer limit, or quote unquote, what they prescribe, but the new standards have us requiring more anyway, and we're doing that, and we're paying for positions, if we can recoup that cost somewhere in the future.
Just let the CAO weigh in on that.
Through Madam Chair, I can't remember the last time I had the conversation with him. I do bring it up whenever we talk about this topic. And there's some recognition that, yes, probably we should maybe look at it, is how I would see it, that I've gotten the reception so far. But I would think that would be something that we could look at when we go to renew this agreement. I think I don't remember the dates that it's supposed to be up for renewal, but it's probably a year from now. And I'll continue to ask the question and see if I get the answer to that. But the process of determining how many officers you should have and whatnot, that's a formal process that we've not been through. This council just decided to add the 5 officers without going through that formal process. So I'm not sure that they would acknowledge that without going through that process. And I can't remember what the process is called off the top of my head, but
I just kind of look at it when we see all the demographics, the growth, we're now the 3rd largest municipality in the province. The fact that our police officer numbers probably reflect that. I don't think we have the 3rd largest municipal police force in the province by any means. So, it's just something that, as long as it's still being discussed and
It
still
is,
on the
yeah.
verge of discussion, I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next to speak is Counselor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question, going back to what I previously asked before, dealing with the fire departments, and my question before was, does the municipality carry any type of insurance, life insurance, AD&D, for the volunteers, or is this something that the departments, local departments, have through their insurance policies?
We only pay for workers' compensation board portion of their fees in that relation. And I can't speak for what the fire departments themselves may have. Adam or Kim may know more.
Oh, we'll just get Adam to speak on that.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. I don't believe that we carry life insurance, but each department may pay for their own. And I believe, and I'd have to just double check this just off the top of my head, that the province may provide an additional 100,000 of life insurance, but we would need to fact check that to validate. So not through municipality, but I believe some of the each of the departments have their own. Correct, yes, through you, Madam Chair. Yes.
Yeah, I know Elmsted has, I started something years back to cover them. So I'm not sure about the other department, but I know Elmsted has a certain amount of life coverage for their members. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor, next to speak is Counselor Tingley.
Through the chair, question to the CAO. That increase per 6.5% per officer for RCMP officer, can we have any input in that or ask anything about that? Like seems to be quite a bit over the CPI. How do they justify? I know they negotiate some kind of an agreement, but should we be going back and saying, look, this impacts our budget. Can you not stick closer to the CPI? That might sound like a. Well, I think it's a reasonable request, actually. Yeah.
Go ahead.
through you, Madam Chair. So that's a number that we get from the RCMP generally. I don't know if we've had, sometimes they're delayed in getting it to us. I don't know. Pardon? You're on.
Through the chair, CEO is correct. In years past, they used to be very quick getting us that number approximately November of each year, and we could actually put in what the percentage increase should be. We've found in the past few years that we weren't getting those numbers till March, sometimes even in April, so we have to go with a percentage factor on our end. Last year we did 5%, and it came in over budget, and it came back to council. This year we ended up doing another 5% over what it came in at, which turned into a 6.5% budget to budget. So we've gone with that increase again. I would agree it is very high, but seeing as we went with a similar high percentage last year and it still came in over, that's really the best we can do at this point.
So, and
Well,
ta-
I'm not, yeah.
So
Well,
that's-
maybe there's nothing we can do about it.
that's the first part of your question. The second part of your question is they do guard those numbers fairly closely. However, we've gotten them in the past through, there was a presentation that was done and they did give the spreadsheet out on how those numbers get calculated. There's a lot that goes into the back to those calculations of the per officer cost. we can ask for them, but I'm not sure they're going to give them to us willingly. And I would say we would be hard pressed to influence them because there are CMP costs and our CMP numbers. Their labor agreements are all entwined. Their leases for their buildings that they have leases for, their mortgages. Like, there's not a lot of influence, well, no influence, I would say, that we would have on those numbers.
Sounds very straightforward.
Thank you,
That's it.
Counselor. Next to speak is Counselor Musa. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking at the education again. And our overall increase in assessment was new assessment is 12 or 13%. So I think what we did here, we increased the education by more than they're asking and use it in the budget to show it as a 1% reduction. I would like to do, what I would like to see be is increase it by only 9% what the increase is and come back with a 1 cent increase in the budget. This way we could look at decreasing if we can find that cent somewhere else. But I think I like to be transparent with my residents, and I would like to show it the way it is. Raise the education and transfer the same amount to the province, then find the other reduction we need to do, or even come up with the 1 cent increase in the budget. I think it's more fair to the resident to know that we needed that cents and we increased it instead of using the money that we're supposed to send to the province and take some $400,000 or $800,000 that above what they ask or above their increase and use it to lower the budget. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but
Well, CAO would like to comment on it.
No, it doesn't entirely make sense to me. But I think I know what you're saying. Except for that one table that we talked about last week, your general tax rate is just your general tax rate. It's all together in one rate. This number of 9% is based on your uniform assessment. So that uniform assessment that we're using this year is based on your assessments from last year. So they take all of the assessments across the province from 2024, in this case, and they give us our uniform assessment to use for 2026 numbers. So because your 2025 assessments went up, next year you will see this number go up even more. So for this year, yes, there's a slight dip in one and an increase in the other, but over the course of, say, 10 years, your uniform assessment is going to go up, your education is going to go up more than your general tax rate expenses are going to go up as a percentage. So except for that one table that we kind of got stuck on last week, this is just, yes, there's a $737,000 increase in education this year. It's probably going to be much more than that next year and much more than that again the year after that, because your uniform assessment is going to go up higher than other municipalities across the province because you're growing.
Mhm.
So I don't think we should get hung up on this sort of the appearance of money in, money out, not matching what the rates are set at. It's really, yes, there's a $737,000 increase in education that we have to pay out. That's the message, is that it's a significant part of that 3.4 million that we need to raise to secure this draft budget. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but when your neighbor in a municipality that don't include that in their general tax rate, it's hard to explain to people. When people
Yeah.
start complaining your general tax rate is higher than West Hants, I have no way to explain to them because you're gonna go through to a very complex situation. So if we exclude that and we do our general tax rate like we raise that money, we put that money, but we don't include it in the general tax rate. It's easier for us, neighboring municipality that don't include that in their general tax rate. That's my point. Like,
Yeah.
I know
You're-
it doesn't make any difference in the budget process, but it make difference when you try to explain to people who think they knows everything, and you cannot win. Like,
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I would argue that you can't compare any general tax rate across this entire province because there are such different models of taxation and tax policy from municipality to municipality. You have municipalities that are highly dependent on area rates. You have municipalities, even for things like wastewater, some are done by assessment, some are done on the water bill, some are done by a per dwelling unit, some aren't charged at all. They're just in the general tax rate. So to that, I would say, as a resident, you need to understand the tax burden that you're facing and where that comes from. And it's got nothing, comparing general tax rates is futile because there's so much that differs from municipality to municipality. I've been trying to figure out how to compare, I've been asked a lot over the last 27 years to compare the general tax rates and figure out where we stand. And it's so difficult to figure that out. We went probably 10 years ago to an exercise where we did do the total tax burden for a home in West Hants, right down to the bungalow with 3 bedrooms, like that type of thing. And we did commercial in Burnside compared to commercial in Elmsdale. And when you take into account the cost per acre, like the assessments per acre, the building conditions, like if you really break it down like we did, there's really no argument to say that East Hants has higher taxes than anywhere else. But you have to go through that exercise, and people aren't going to do that necessarily. Some people might, but that's why we try and show that the total tax burden is really what is impacting people's bottom lines at the end of the day. How much money is coming out of their paycheck is that tax burden. And that's really the important number, is how much people are going to pay more at the end of the day. I know it's frustrating that you can't compare apples to apples, and people do try to do that. I would say if you have a constituent who's wants to understand better how that plays out between East Hants and West Hants, or whatever municipality, Halifax or Colchester, then they could probably call into our finance department, look at some of the rates. Like, we could help them better understand it. But you can't paint it with a broad brush as far as, I mean, you know that, but for the public,
I know that, but I
You
don't know
know
how
that,
to
but-
explain it, right? Like,
right.
if you're being 27 years and you couldn't come up with a solution, how can I come up with an answer? So,
Right. You cannot compare them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next to speak is Counselor Rhino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Going back to the RCMP and that 6.5% increase in budget per officer, that's much more than just your per officer getting a union contract raise, I would assume. And I would assume that's, vehicles, so on and so forth. But then it goes on to including shared costs. Can you go over those shared costs for the people that are listening?
Increase in budget per officer, including shared costs.
Go ahead, CIO.
3 minutes. So there's a lot of shared costs associated with RCMP, including, sort of your dog teams, your traffic, accident reconstruction folks, your dive teams, your whole H division, headquarters, the tactical teams, the national headquarters, like all of those things are included in shared costs. So your per officer is related to the person, the function of policing on the ground, and then your shared costs are all those costs that the RCMP has to recover. Some of those are covered by the province, some are recouped from the municipalities through the contract. And then DNA is included on top of that, and that relates back to specific to East Hants throughout the year.
How much of an it says here represents approximately 21 cents of the total of 78.5 general rate. Can you, off the top of your head, can you remember what that was last year? Is it,
So 20 cents, isn't it?
You can look it up.
pardon?
Yeah, 22, 1,
Well,
3.
it was 22 last year, now it's 21, and you had a 6.5, and it's increase, so. Anyway, I think it explains itself, I think, I'll leave it at that, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next to speak is Warden Rolston.
Thank you. Just quickly going back to the education thing, I just want to mention that all of those charges are based on what they call uniform assessment. I'm not going to try and explain uniform assessment here because I've been here 28 years or something like that, and I'm not sure I have figured it out completely yet myself. I know we spent many years when I first came on council trying to negotiate with the province and explain to them why their uniform assessment was inaccurate and inequitable. We were not successful, and after a while, well, we stopped beating the dead horse to death. But basically, as East Hants grows and does better, the formula that they use to come up with uniform assessment causes our uniform assessment to rise. That's what some of the stuff is based on, but what it means is that we pay a greater percentage of the whole in the province than other municipalities do. And therein kind of lies the problem. Although we are growing, we are not necessarily incurring more costs, but the uniform assessment charges us more out of the whole pot. And I'll leave it at that, but the uniform assessment thing throws a lot of stuff off. Those are my comments, thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Okay, seeing no one left to speak, you want to keep going?
No, I'm done.
Okay. Thank you, Wade. And next, we'll have the Community Partnership Fund and General Government Grant Fund with Joe.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So every year I come during budget and I present two of our annual grant programs. And that this becomes part of your budget, but the operation of these grants for me to manage through the year. So this year, we'll start with the Community Partnership Fund. And this is an annual report, so you should remember year to year. There are 7 groups currently in the program, and this year we did receive one new application. It was from the East Hants Farmers Market, but when staff reviewed the application, it was dealing with more facility costs, and that aligns with the Gen Gov, so we moved it over to that second program, and you'll see that in a few minutes. So then we stick with the same 7 organizations that have been in this program, and excuse me, typically we review each group and then come with their operational grant for the year. You can see in the first column or the middle column, it will show like what we're proposing. These numbers are in the draft operation budget and then what those groups received last year. So there's 2 groups that are different this year. And we'll go back through there. This is just the background with the policy. The one thing I would like to point out, and this can be confusing sometimes, especially like in the 7 attachments that were with this report, it's their annual submission. They get their money sometime in 2025-26 by reporting the previous year. So their reporting that we're showing you now in February of 2026 was their annual report for 2024 into 2025. So some of their information is outdated, and that's what is sort of summarized here. I do work with these groups regularly, and I can sometimes speak to current programs or changes. But as people will recognize, they're the groups that are doing a lot in the across the municipality. So first up, alphabetically, is Corridor Community Options. The group has been receiving this grant for about 4 years now. We have left them in at their 15,000 operational grant. They are about to embark in some new things coming down the pipe, so we may hear differently as they arrive in their park location. They opened officially in December, and things are going really well for them down there. Our next group is Community Rider, and they have been in this program for several years before the community grant program even existed, and they're currently receiving $50,000 in operational funds, and that would be recommended to stay the same for this coming year. The next one is the Family Resource Center, and council did hear from Kathy, the executive director, in November with a report, and did make a motion to increase their operational funding or consider that through the budget process, and staff did review that. And we are recommending 40,000, an increase from their 20,000. And the Historical Society, as you know, they do some archival work. They also run a museum. They have a facility over here, Park Road, and originally they received funding specifically to their rent, but last year we expanded that to include some general operating as well, as a lot of their typical costs were going up regarding insurance and those things. So we're recommending 20,000 for that group. The Sports Heritage Society, as you know, this group operates the Hall of Fame. They do the induction ceremony, and then they also do some current local sport awards called Super Six, and then they maintain their displays. We are recommending 5,000, which is their current amount. This coming year, their budget shows that they're not planning to do Hall of Fame. They're going to take a kind of a rebuild year, get some video content ahead, those sorts of things. In that, their budget projections are much lower than their annual operating traditionally has been. So we have, staff is recommending that we still award 5,000 in operational expenses, but that it aligns with expenses once they're incurred. So we would just ask, as they get their insurance and different costs, once they have spent that their operational costs could be reimbursed, which is slightly different than this way the program is. There is a small wording in the motion, that the recommended motion, that would show what that means. East Hants Youth Links, they're doing a lot of youth programming and supporting some different community events as well. They've been really popular with some of their escape rooms and seasonal events that don't just help the youth, but the families and the community. They received an increase last year. They did have a surplus last year, but there was also a staffing gap for a little while, but they're back with not just a regular program coordinator, but a secondary staff as well, both working part-time, but supporting their program. So we recommend the 8,000, which is what they received last year as well. And finally, we have the Kids Action Group. They are officially known as the Annapolis Valley Hants County Action Program for Children, and this organization runs in East Hants, specifically Hants North area, and also Kings County. We have been supporting for the last few years just the Hants North, East Hants component of that group. And they have really struggled without, very similar to what Kathy told us from the Family Resource Center, they have been struggling with not any change in funding received. A lot of their funding is from the federal program. Yet the demand and the need in the community continues to grow. They've also added a supervised parenting and exchange service, and they're one of the only approved sites around for that. And it's a real need, and they partner with a lot of community groups. I'm speaking to a little bit more of what this group is doing, because while we didn't see this group come in and to present, I actually, I recommended that they probably didn't need to because it would have sounded almost identical to Kathy's presentation at the exact same time. So they have asked for an increase as their operational costs are growing and their needs are increasing. And staff, looking at their annual operating, the volume of services, they recommend a comparable increase of 20,000 up from 10 that they have been receiving for the last 5 years. So those are the 7 organizations. It aligns clearly with our strong community connections and all of these things that are making East Hants what it is. The list again is here. You can see the 2 bolded, our Family Resource Center and Kids Action this year. To put that in perspective, last year the 2 groups we increased were Youth Links and the Historical Society. And as always, we attach those 7 documents, and the alternative for council to consider is really any amount, but the ones on this table are the ones that are in the draft budget. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. I don't. Councillor Perry?
I'm going to move the recommended motion that Corporate Residential Service Committee recommend to council, the council approve the list of recommended community partnership fund organizations be included in the draft 26-27 budget and grants to be dispersed following the final budget approval. Corridor Community Options for Adults, 15,000. East Hants Community Rider, 50,000. East Hants Family Resource Center, 40,000. East Hants Historical Society, 20,000. East Hants Sports Heritage Society, based on operational expenses, up to 5,000. East Hants Youth Links, 8,000. And Kids in Action, Annapolis Valley Hants Community Action Program, $20,000.
Second.
Okay. If you want to take the chair, Warden, I just have a question about the funding for the Annapolis Valley Hants Community Action Program. So that is one entity, like if we are contributing more money, is the money spent in the location that is in, okay.
It is a fair question. It is, their bank account probably doesn't sit in East Hants, but they have some very clear budget parameters. And in the beginning, when they got this money, they actually had a separate reserve for it because they had a target that they were trying to do with a vehicle and things like that. So it's been quite specific. And whenever I speak with the executive director, especially an email or anything, we're always copying the local coordinators and following up. They're my contact first and the executive director and the office side second. So the money is a condition of this, is that it stays in East Hants.
Oh, okay.
East Hants gets a shout out every year at their AGM because they try really hard to get support from the Valley organizations and municipalities and they don't.
Oh,
So.
okay. Well, not that I was just wondering how they break down their donations according to, or if they do at all. So thank you for the answer. Thank you. Okay, so motions on the floor. Seeing no one left to speak, we'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously.
All right, so thank you. We're on to report number 2. This is the general government grant. And again, this is a report we bring annually. And you'll see, we talk about general government grants throughout the year because there is a miscellaneous component. Just last month at council, we put a couple general government grants through from the miscellaneous. So here is the chart, and I will review much the same way as the last report. Most of the groups that we're talking about, or the organizations, or even the events, are the same year over year. You'll see sometimes we don't issue the funds in its entirety, or sometimes we don't issue them for that group. It's a matter of certainly as staff, we do follow up with the group. They know that the money is available. And then you'll see at the bottom, so there are 2 things to note on this chart, and I'll go through them a little more detail in a moment, but the farmer's market is listed in the operating budget. And this is in response to their community partnership application that was received. And there's also the 4,000 in contingency or miscellaneous funds. And you'll see in our actual funds released, just like so far this year, it's over 5,000 or 5,500 that we've used, and probably was another 700 just last week that we should have added to this report. So those are over, but other areas were under, and we work within that annual operations. And the general government grant program does carry a reserve that we have been known to see used throughout the year. So as a reminder, this program is a little different than the other grants. It doesn't have an application on the website. It's used more as needed. We see sponsorship, we see facility use, we see public service, kind of smaller scales to the same organizations that you might see, or similar organizations to that community partnership, just like a lower tier of that. Remembering Canadian Heroes didn't access their money this year. They've been doing some things a little differently. I'm not ready to remove them from the budget because when they are active, they are still doing a few things. They're very careful not to ask for funding unless they have used it specifically in East Hants. This is another group that travels around to different areas and supports education, junior high and high school students. But they haven't accessed the funding the last couple of years, and that a lot is that digital education and different experiences for them. Hants County Exhibition has been in this program for years. They have been receiving $500 annually for the last several years. This has been aligning with bronze level event sponsorship. Rumor has it that their levels might change, and what that actually looks like is not out yet, but that's where this number has traditionally come from. We have our bursaries. We have the Christmas donations or the holiday donations that we do to the Christmas programs and the food banks, and the list of those are there. We have recommended 14,000 across those 7, so increasing that $1,000 donation to 2,000 for these groups for this coming year. This group doesn't typically submit all their documentation. We submit this more as a donation in that November timeframe ahead of their busy season. Code Association, they do lots to support the community, and they do all across the municipality with partnerships in different locations, and we're recommending 2,000. The bursary fund and the golf tournament for Constable Heidi Stevenson has had 1,000 the last couple years. They're grateful with that donation. 4-H sponsorship, we put this line into the budget just last year after they used miscellaneous funding for a few years. There's 2 different regions or zones within East Hants. And one group always uses it and the other sometimes. Recycle Your Cycle through Rotary Club. Again, this is one that used miscellaneous funds a few times. This is very specific to the Mount Uniacke area. They provide new helmets to the children who are getting bicycles through a program that they have with partnership with the bike shop. They collect bikes and donate them. And many Mount Uniacke families have benefited. I think it was like 43 or something in the last 2 years. Might be more than that. And we have the annual hockey tournament for the East Hants team. They play a charity game against the RCMP. This is one where we fund their ice rental through a grant. The budgeted amount of $650 with the youth hockey rate. We didn't actually need the whole amount last year. They might take an extra half hour. We're not sure, so we didn't really want to reduce that amount, but it was around $400. Then the Safegrad was new to the budget line this year, but had been using miscellaneous funds. Not this year, but 2025-26, so the current year. And then we're recommending the same. This went in last year after some discussion. We have supported Hants North in the past. They didn't need it. There is no Safegrad program similarly happening at Avonview for the Mount Uniacke residents. But if they did, there would still be some room in that 7,000. And so we're recommending that stays the same this year. And then, as I mentioned, that contingency fund, sometimes we use 3,000, sometimes we use 6,000, but with the reserve and the other accounts, it tends to work out. And then finally, our new application to this program is the East Hants Farmers Market. So when we received their community partnership fund application, and when the executive director presented to council in December, they're looking for. The application originally said like $5,543, but a large portion of their budget was based on the facility rental fees. So we wanted to make sure that if it was facility fees, which again, we're paying through a grant to the Sportsplex, kind of an internal transfer that we do, it aligned more with this when you looked at Safegrad and the hockey. That this was the right place for this funding model. And then we reviewed them under what else they might be able to access and all those things. And they will be able to access insurance grant. And together that will offset for their pilot year. We did round up, they thought with their current booking at the Sportsplex and other facilities, that 3,600 to 3,800 would probably do. So rather than have them come back if they added one more market or something along those lines, staff are recommending with the italics up to 4,000 in rental fee support for the farmers market. And the rest of this aligns with very similar to my last report. You'll see in our budget an increase of $11,000 to this line. Council has the option to change any of those numbers, but I will come back up to the recommended motion and answer any questions about that.
Okay, first to speak is Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question about the Dr. Snow bursaries. Is that from an endowment or is that just out of the government grant in Dr. Snow's name?
Correct. It is an annual expense in the general government grant column.
And when is the last time that general expense has been increased?
Years. Yes, years. It is 3 separate grants, or 3 separate bursaries, one to each of the high schools, including Avonview. It does still align. When we did a little research a couple of years ago, a lot of bursaries still remain on that 1,000, but it's certainly something that council can consider.
Yeah, because I know it hasn't changed the whole time I've been here, and I don't even think it changed 20 some odd years ago when I was watching my sister's kids graduate and stuff. So I'm just, the reason I bring it up is we all know education's costs have gone way up. Like, that's not even gonna buy them a computer now. It's not gonna do a whole lot. It's a great gesture by the municipality, but if we really wanna have a bursary that can mean anything, I think we should look at possibly doing a scan and looking to see what costs are and what costs have gone up since the bursary has been created, so we can get a better idea of what the bursary amount should be to meet the original intent when the bursary was created of what that $1,000 could do. I think that would go a long way to help the students that receive this bursary, because I know I've been there to see it presented for the last number of years, and like some of the recipients of this is money that they need to make it to that first year of school. And if there's any way that we could help them with a little bit more, I would be all for it, but I'll let other councillors weigh in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next to speak is Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just for Councillor Perry's no. Okay, Madam Chair, sorry.
Getting a pay raise.
Okay. Okay. To Councillor Perry's comment, I think if we want to look with our growth, like we're growing so fast, so we might be able to support 2 kids with 1,000 instead of giving 1 kid a 2,000. So that's my first point. And about, can you go back to the Safegrad? Okay, did you say the Hant North didn't use it last year?
Correct.
Okay, so is there any money left in the budget from last year?
There was money left from that. It has been used through the, some of the contingency as well from some of the others, but when we look at what was actually spent, sorry, I'll scroll up. There's about $1,000 left from that.
Just 1,000,
Yeah.
okay. So, yeah, my point is if we put 7,000, I don't want to see it accumulate and not using it, like putting money where we don't need it. So it's good. If it's only 1,000, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next to speak is Counselor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support the East End Farmers Market. My question through to you, the staff, is does that cause much disruption to the goings on at the Sportsplex when they're on the go?
Well, the pop-up markets, through the chair, the pop-up markets were held with quite a bit of success. It actually worked out to the favor of, we were able to have more staff in to work at Roxy's and have the cafe going. I think it added to the atmosphere at the Sportsplex. Was certainly their preference to remain there. They were willing to seek other opportunities in the community. But I do know the model is not to be there for January, February, March. What they're proposing for this coming year is monthly markets, April through December. And so those summer markets might be in the parking lot, they might be on the dry pad, might be a combination of both. And I think that will just increase people through the facility, especially in those quieter months.
Thank you for that answer. Based on what I hear, I move that Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends to Council that pending appropriate documentation is received in the passing of the 2026-2027 budget. Council approved the following general government grants for disbursement in 2026-2027. Remembering Canada's Heroes, 1,000. Hants County Exhibition, 500. Dr. Snow Bursary, 3,000. East End's Food Banks Christmas Programs, 14,000. Code Association, 2,000. Constable Heidi Stevenson Memorial Golf Tournament, RCMP, 1,000. 4-H Sponsorship, 200. Recycle Your Cycle, the Rotary Club, 500. Braden Bannister, HERH RCMP, 650. Safeguard Activities, facility fees, up to a maximum of 7,000. East Hants Farmers Market, facility fees, up to a maximum of 4,000.
Second that.
Okay, on before the motion. Warden Rolston.
Yes, thank you. Going back to the Dr. Snow bursaries, and Councillor Perry is absolutely right. We have not increased those in forever. And Councillor Rhino and I are probably the only ones here who served on council with Dr. Snow, who was a longtime member and former warden of this council. And he was also a great supporter of education and assisted with the education of folks very quietly during his life. So I'm just wondering, if we were to increase that amount, can we do it without increasing the rate? Is there money in reserves from these grants that hasn't been spent over the years that would cover an increase this year?
So through the chair, we have in the past, when we make changes to these two grant programs, if it doesn't work into the operational budget, we typically would fund it through reserve the first year. I might be speaking about the finance level there, but that's something we have done with CPF or general government in the past, like as these come through, because that would be an easy way. General government reserve does have at least 30,000 the last time we were dealing with that. So to move some money from that, it wouldn't change the draft budget, but could be added with another motion.
Well, given the changes since we established this grant in what students need to pursue secondary education, and Councillor Perry mentioned computers and the costs and, you know, things that we really didn't even consider back then. The costs of staying in residence, or if you're not staying in residence, an apartment or traveling, tuition, books, Like, the whole thing, it's probably, I wouldn't even hazard a guess how much more than it was when we established this. So it may seem like a lot, but having her, I'm gonna throw it out there for discussion, and hopefully this would kind of bring us up and honor Dr. Snow's memory as we intended while helping students in the municipality. I'm going to move an amendment to increase the Dr. Snow bursaries to $7,500, which would be $2,500 per school.
Where's that money coming?
So,
That's quite a
We need a second.
okay, so the motion's been made and seconded. Counselor Musa?
Just a question, and we're gonna keep it like 2,500 for one student? I wouldn't, for one student?
That would be my intent, because I think it might not help as many but I think it would be real assistance to students in an amount like that.
I'm sorry, I don't agree with that because not all the people that receiving it are not well off. Some people that received it, I know they are well off and they could pay for their education. I think it's something that honor Dr. Snow, and if we spread it for 2 students on each district, it will be more honorable for him. That's the way I see it, because like the 2,000, even if you don't have money to go to school, the 2,500 is not gonna do anything to you. So, but given to 2 students, that mean a lot of people know that we're doing it, and I think it go better for 2 students in each district. That's my point. I don't know what the other counselor thinks.
Thank you, Counselor.
Speak.
Counselor Rhino?
Well, I hear what Councillor Moose is saying, and I agree with him to a point, but we only give out 3 bursaries, so if we give out 4 bursaries, where's that extra bursary going to? Is it going to the one of the Hants schools, or is it going to the Windsor one? You know, so I think the warden is being very generous. I'd rather, you know, you're taking it from what, 1,000 to 25? I think that's quite a jump. I'd rather see it in the range of $500 increments, so that's my feeling. I think 2,500 is a fair jump. That's about 150%, so.
Thank you, Counselor. Next to speak is Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, my idea is two kids per district. So if you give 6 per school,
Can I
so
speak to him?
if you give 2 in East, 2 here, 2 in Mount Uniac, and 2 in rural instead of 1 and 1 and 1. So if you get 6,000, you give 1,000 for each student for 6 kids.
Pardon me, I misunderstood. So you would like,
Go ahead, Counselor Rhino.
so you would like to see 6,000 or 6,000 instead of 7,500, I guess is what you're. I can agree with that. I can agree with that.
That's not my motion.
Okay.
Get a motion on that.
Warden Rolston.
Well, respectfully, that's not my motion. The discussion has been that $1,000 is very little help to a student in this day and age, and I would agree with that. And I think the idea, it's a bursary. There are criteria that the schools use in awarding that bursary. We don't choose who gets it. And I just believe it would be more meaningful to keep it at 3 bursaries. And I know it's a significant jump from what we give now, but had we been making that jump in increments as we probably should have been over the past number of years, we'd probably be at more than 2,500 by now. So I do see it as a reasonable amount. I understand the idea of wanting to help more students. But if the $1,000 is not enough to really help a student, then spreading, then increasing it and spreading that $1,000 out to more students doesn't really accomplish what I had in mind. My intent was to increase the Dr. Snow bursary to an amount that would be meaningful in assisting the students who receive that bursary in pursuing their secondary education. So my motion that is on the floor is to increase it to $7,500. And that would leave it the way it is now at being awarded $2,500 per school. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Next to speak is Counselor Dixon.
Deputy Warden.
Sorry, Deputy Warden.
Okay, through the chair, so it's $7,500, $2,500 to each school. Then staff could make a decision to do it to 2 students, because your motion does not include,
My motion is intended to follow the procedure that we.
but your motion is $2,500 per school,
For 3 schools.
per bursary. I myself like to, with some of the other councils, I'd rather see it split between 2 per school. You're making 2 students happier. Thank you.
Okay, next to speak is Counselor McPhee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I looked at this, I thought $1,000, I know when I gave it out 2 years ago, it kind of felt we weren't given very much. I thought $1,000 is coffee money, so I was thinking 2,000 for each student for a total of 6,000. But I'm certainly willing to support 2,500 per student. But to say split that amongst, that just doesn't make sense again to make it 1,000 per student. So I was thinking 2,000 a student, but I'm quite happy with 2,500. I'd even go higher as far as that goes to really help the students out. And if you want to give it to 2 students, then yeah, let's take it to 12,000. Give 2 students in each place 2,000, but it's got to be a significant amount. 1,000 just isn't anything today. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Warden, if you can take the. Oh. Counselor Merriam?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I've got the calculation right. Just for curiosity, I plugged in 2%, 30 years, $1,000, and 30 years later, it's a jump. I mean, it's almost $1,900, and I don't know if that is a fair comparison point, but I think at some point, I'm looking at this, it hasn't kept up with inflation. It could be increased. We could probably debate for some time, what the exact amount should be. But, I think it's a fair point that it could be increased. And, if it's 2,500, that's not far from $1,900. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay, so I go to the awards every year and I see the bursaries being handed out to people. And for my own personal feeling is that I would rather double the number of students that received it rather than having the same amount of students receiving it at a higher amount. That's just my preference. Thank you.
I'll hand the chair back to you.
Thank you, Warden. Next to speak is Counselor Musa.
Well, I still stick with my feeling that, especially when the warden said, I didn't know Dr. Snow, and she said he was very supportive for kids' education and stuff. I think spreading the love will make him much happier. That's my point. So I've never met him. I wish I did, but that's how I see it, because between 1,000 and 2,000 is no difference. Like, it's not gonna make or break it, but making two kids happy in each district is better than one. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the floor. Seeing, pardon me?
The amendment to change it to 7,500.
Oh, okay.
That's the motion.
Okay. Okay, so we've got an amendment on the floor. No one left to speak. We'll go to the vote on the amendment. And the motion has passed with a vote of 7-4, with myself, Counselor Hebb, Counselor Rhino, and Counselor Mitchell voting against the amendment. Which button is it? Okay, now we're voting on the motion. The original. Okay. Clarification on what we're voting on.
The amended motion with the doctor's anniversaries being 7,500 instead of 3,000. So that whole motion on the screen, except doctor's anniversaries, would be 7,500.
Okay. Okay, and okay, and the motion is passed with 9-4 and 2 against, with myself and Counselor Rhino voting against. Okay,
Thank you.
all done? Thank you. Okay. Next item is the review of the draft 2026-27 business plans with the CAO. And we've got about 5 minutes left before our scheduled time of adjournment, but you can see what you can get done in 5 minutes.
Computer plugged in here. Okay. I'm in.
Before our scheduled time of adjournment, but you,
That's me. Thank you, Counselor. So
it's regretful.
I think what I'll focus on in my 4.5 minutes left is you do have your business plans that have been put into your binders, and these slides are in here. The business plans haven't changed. You still have sort of the financial piece for each department. Then you have their priority 1 projects, the priority 2 projects, some summary tables. So each one of those we'll go through as we go through these next week. The first one in there is your budget for council. There's very little change in your budget. The one significant difference is, of course, last year you increased your beautification and it came from reserves. This year your beautification grants are $3,000 for each district, and the full amount is on the general tax rate. And you don't have any significant capital projects this year for your council. Primarily those would be like your council chamber projects. So we've just gone through the $100,000 plus project of redoing all your technology in chambers. So there's nothing in this budget, capital or operating, that is really significant from a council operations point of view. There's still some training dollars in there to advance some of our equitable East Hants plan. And this year, of course, there's no money in there for your familiarization tour because that was done in 2025. The key thing for these slides, there's 3 slides here of significant initiatives proposed for 2026. So these 3 slides, if you want to go through them, they are sort of the project buckets from each of the individual departments. So if there's something in the budget that is different or new, then it will be mentioned here, and it will have sort of a business plan box to explain why, how it aligns with your strategic plan, those types of things. I want to remind everybody that this is all on top of what we refer to as our annual planned activities. So there's still thousands of inspections that are done on properties. There's still tax collection done. There's still communications that are created. There's still, fire services that are supported. All of those things still happen on top of these things. So these projects you'll see, just looking at the first slide here, like the Fire Service Provincial Governance Review. that is happening to us. I would say use that kind of language, but we need to make sure we allocate some resources to that project over the next 3 or 4 years. This is year one. It's going to be a significant amount of time and energy put into that. Some of these things come from different strategies that you have. So for example, your new economic and business development strategy, the in-person regional local business support services, that's a project that has come from that strategy. So that would be where we intend to go around the municipality and go to the businesses to provide support to them, instead of them having to come to Elmsdale to meet with our business folks. Here, the public transit fixed route service, if you go to that box, that's not actually doing the service. Council still has a lot of work to do as far as public transit and getting that engagement model sorted out. Council made some decisions before Christmas around what that engagement model looks like. So that is around, the project box will describe it in the document, but it's around that public engagement and next steps. A lot on EMO this year in this budget, a lot about public safety awareness, some more senior socials, those types of things. And then working with our external partners to make sure that we're at those community events where they're engaging with our people so we can share that information. There's a lot in this budget around your real estate function. So council made some decisions around the DAR land. That money is in this budget to make sure we can get that done. We're looking at the Elmsdale school site. There'll be some reports coming to council around that this year. And then all of our asset management work. And I can't stress enough how important this work is for you as a council to understand what you own and how we're managing it and how it needs to be maintained. And I can't explain to you in words how phenomenal the work is that's being done around asset management across the board. So Adam's staff is working through asset management with John's staff, with Jesse's staff, with Alana's staff, like everybody's part of this project, and the data that we're getting is quite incredible. So as we go through these 3 slides, so there's this one, there's all kinds of work being done on flood mitigation studies and lots of capital work in here for sewer and water systems, lots of studies, lots of playgrounds. These are really high level, but each one of these bullet points has a full project description and how it ties back into your strategic plan and your key strategies and your objectives. So there's 3 full slides on those this year, and I think that's probably the most we've had in a long time. When I went through and went to prepare my CAO message for this budget, I typically go through all those project boxes and list them and sort of pull them together. It's a lot. There's a lot of projects that are on the go for this year. So these 3 slides kind of give you the high level, and then in your document that you got, you'll see each individual project. So I'm going to end there. Next week, we'll start with on Tuesday. On Tuesday, we will start with the CAO's office, and then we will take you through each department. As Wade mentioned, we'll have some sort of inputs from staff as we go. One of the primary ones is the Sportsplex. We plan on having sort of a visionary discussion with council around what projects you want to prioritize and how you want that facility to move forward. And then once we're through that, we'll have some good discussion, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you, CAO. So our next budget meeting is Tuesday at 7 o'clock, February 10th, and